What's going on, Birds fans and New Year? This is the Bird's Nest, and I'm Tanner Gilmartin, joined as always by Max Gretzula. And Max, we're talking playoffs already. Still got a week of a regular game left, and the Eagles sit comfortably in the playoffs. Now they can advance their seeding right now, but it's a good place in if you're a fan and Eagles player right now. And I know that's not how we expected to talk about this the second to last episode of the Bird's Nest and positive vibe playoffs. Considering how the season started 2-5, it was closer than some might have expected. It wasn't a double-digit win. Jalen Hurts, 17 of 26 for 200, and Boston Scott picking up most of the carries with 17 rushes for 47 yards and 2 touchdowns. Miles Sanders still injured. Jordan Howard had a couple rushes for 26 yards. I believe he had 11. But Jordan Howard's a guy that you want on your team. I feel like if you're without your starting running back, I mean, Jordan Howard, a great pickup. The Eagles kind of going back and forth playing tag in a way with Jordan Howard the past couple of seasons. But Dallas Goedert leading the way with 71 yards, 6 catches. Devonta Smith, who could possibly get 1,000 receiving yards in this upcoming game, taking that title from Deshaun Jackson. And Boston Scott also had 39 receiving yards, a receiving back for the Eagles. I mean, this rush game has picked up greatly the last, I believe, 7 games for the Eagles. It's just been so run heavy, breaking Eagles records. But Max, in this next game against Dallas, these are two teams that are already in the playoffs. I mentioned the Eagles can improve seeding, but do the Eagles play all their starters?
I don't know. That's a good question. I don't think so. If you had to ask me right now, especially because a lot of them are in the protocols and whatnot, things like that, of course, with COVID. So we'll see who's even available this weekend. But I don't know. I expect Hurts to play. I don't know how long he'll be in there, but I do expect him to play.
And for the COVID list for the Cowboys, already has Parson, Tyron Smith, Anthony Brown on it. These you wouldn't maybe expect Parson to play the entire game anyway,
Right.
against the Eagles. But I mean, with such a young team and a team where in the beginning of the season, you wouldn't expect to have as much depth to be able to afford to play these starters going into a playoff game and risk anything happening. COVID list. I mean, there were so many players. You had Jason Kelce. I believe most of the offensive line. A lot of, I believe it was both Goddard and Stoll on the COVID list for the tight end room as well. Goddard, probably not a player I would play as much in the game anyway. But that also depends on the depth now that they would have at the position. But Jalen Hurts, I say play Jalen Hurts the first quarter at least. At least. That's kind of like preseason scenario, just playing the first quarter. But I want him to get out there playing game time because you go into the playoffs after that break, sort of getting back into a rhythm. I believe that would help if he had played the week before. But I know a lot of people want to see Minshew out there again, and that's probably likely to happen. There's a link, but Devonta Smith, the only reason he's playing in there probably is to get at that receiving record over the 1,000-yard hump. Max, now that the Birds they clinched way above many patients, what do they have to do that they're in the play?
Well, I think listen, for the most part here, and I want to touch on Devonta Smith real quickly. I want to mention that he's having a good season overall. So we even talked about last week. The running a game is obviously first and foremost with this offense, but the threat of throwing the football is still there. Jalen Hurts has gotten better. I still want him to see, I still want to see more progress with that. But I'm not going to sit here and bash Jalen Hurts. He's got us in the playoffs. and I'm excited for it. But Jamar Chase, you go back and you think about that trade Howie Roseman made. He's been a stud with the Cincinnati Bengals. He's a guy the Eagles were probably targeting with that early pick last year. So I want to ask you this question real fast before we flip the script. Would you, if you could, go back and undo that trade, or would you stick with it and say, you know what, I'm like the pick we're going to get with the Colts or with the Dolphins pick, and I like Devonta Smith, or would you just say, hey, just give me Jamar Chase on this offense? It would make us even better.
I mean, it's sort of going to be a biased answer now, Max. I mean, I love Devonta Smith. At first, I was a little skeptical. Not sure he was going to be able to mirror the image he had college, but these last few weeks have really proven. I mean, his awareness on the field, that of a veteran player, and also. And this is what I was thinking during the draft. You already have that kind of connection between Jalen and Devonta going in because they've played with each other before. I mean, there's Jamar Chase as well. Such a weapon for the Bengals. I mean, probably the biggest reason, aside from Joe Burrow just absolutely slinging the ball, that the Bengals are in the playoffs. That connection, I mean, that's something special. I don't know if it would be that sort of connection if it was just Jalen Hurts behind center, but I think I would have stayed where the Eagles went. And I mean, it's looking like it's paying off because and hopefully, knock on one, unless something terribly wrong happens, you have Jalen Hurts, who you, in my opinion, and I know I'm not sure you're teetering on the Hurts wagon. You're not in or out. But I think the way that he has performed the last we're talking 9 weeks now, and the way that the Eagles have played, I think you have to give Jalen Hurts obviously another season. You don't worry about drafting a quarterback. The prospects aren't that impressive. You go ahead and say, okay, maybe Russ wants out of Seattle, but what's that give you when he's done in 3 years, maybe 4? And that's a maybe, because you look at guys like Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady. I think the best way that the Eagles can remain successful in the future is if they keep Jalen Hurts, and they use those draft picks to either draft young talent at the linebacker position, or maybe make a few trades to bolster up this lineup, because this is a young, impressive offense that the Eagles have right now.
And lastly, real quick, Jalen Reagor too. We talk about him. No catches in the last game, only 1 target. I know it's kind of brushed under the rug now that the Eagles have clinched, and the light has not shown on Jalen Reagor since that Giants loss about a month ago. But man, this is a guy we have to pinpoint here in the future. Jalen Reagor, regardless of the playoffs, what's going to happen with Jalen Reagor moving forward? I mean, the guy is really just getting flushed out of the offense. I don't want to see his career just be over, but it's like he was force-fed the ball early on in the season. We realized he's not really that talented, it looks like. And now it's kind of like, hey, he's not even a part of the offense anymore.
You know what, Max? And this really stinks to be talking about this, because I know you and I both had high expectations for Jalen Reagor coming into this season. And unfortunately, that just hasn't happened. You look at guys that the Eagles let go, like Travis Fulgham, not on the Eagles roster anymore. Could he have been more, more important in this offense than Reagor, who seems to not have been able to find his rhythm? It's too late for Reagor to go on that path, I believe. What the Eagles need to do is pick up a veteran off free agency. There's a lot of guys going to be out there. I wouldn't go ahead and be dramatic and say and call Antonio Brown's number or anything like that yet. Albeit it could help in the playoffs if they did give him a call. Before that, that I think Raiders' time in Philadelphia might be expired at the end of the season, and that's unfortunate. I mean, and it's just been rough for him these past couple of weeks with the booing right out the tunnel. I mean, the boos fill the stadium. Not exactly a fan of that. The guy's just running out of the tunnel and you're already booing him. How do you think he's going to play the rest of the game if, as soon as they call his number, his name, boos, he can barely hear himself think? But then again, that's on him for how he's been performing for the most part.
Yeah, and I think another thing we talk about beginning of the season, if you told me, hey, by the time if the Eagles clinch the playoffs, Jalen Reagor, who we thought was going to be a starter, and rest him, he might be one of the receivers that gets the most targets, the most routes run in this game, just based on the fact that they want to keep Quez Watkins, they want to keep Devontae healthy, Dallas Goedert as well. So I guess Eagles fans, if they decide to not play the starters for a long period of time, expect to see a lot of Jalen Reagor out there.
Yes, and let's talk playoff scenario now. We already hinted at it before, and there's so many different scenarios, Max. We were going about it before the show even started, trying to wrap our head around what the heck has to happen for the Eagles to play the Cowboys, the Rams. But 20 out of 32 scenarios point to the Eagles, as most of the people watching now know. Eagles playing the Buccaneers in that first round of the playoffs. A team that the Eagles are familiar with. You go to week 6, Buccaneers beat the Eagles 28-22. And if the Eagles win, and so does Tampa Bay, they play, that's a lock. Those two teams face off. Even if the Eagles lose and Tampa Bay wins, two teams are facing off. And the only other scenario that really is like third most likely is if the Niners and the Falcons beat the Saints, then the Rams and Eagles face off. Max, out of those two teams, who would you most rather play against? And it's heavily leaning against the Buccaneers, but just for opinion's sake.
Well, I said it last week. I think the Rams are probably my choice of team to play. I really don't want to see Tom Brady. The reason being is I think with Chris Godwin hurt, Antonio Brown obviously out of Tampa Bay, that definitely helps the Eagles on the back end of things as far as their secondary goes. But the Eagles' strength is their rushing attack, and the Tampa Bay defensive run game is very solid, one of the best in the league. So at that point, those two things cancel each other out, and you're left with Jalen Hurts either needing to make plays with his legs like he had to do in week 6, or throw the football. And when you're trying to throw the football and go toe-to-toe with Tom Brady, you're not going to win that battle. So I'm nervous because the Eagles, they run the hell out of the football, but can they really produce at a high level versus that Tampa Bay front seven? I'm not 100% sure that's going to be successful. So I don't want to see Tampa Bay. You look at a team like the Rams, who have a rushing attack that isn't great. Darrell Henderson's not anything special. You had Sony Michel, who isn't shown much flashes in the NFL. If the Eagles and Josh Sweat, who's playing great football from a defensive end standpoint, can get pressure on Stafford, maybe double team Cooper Kupp, and run the football outside of Jalen Ramsey. And I know they got names on that defensive line too with Aaron Donald, of course. But I think the Eagles have a better shot to run the football against the Rams than they do the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So I think they have a better shot to beat the Rams.
Okay. I'm going to pick the Buccaneers just because you picked the Rams. And I'm going to argue my point here because the Buccaneers, like I mentioned, team the Eagles have already played against. And you go to week 6, such a different team than what the Eagles are now and how close that game was looking in the beginning. Or I'll say maybe the second and third quarter. But this team, it's very hard to beat a team twice in the same season. You have that argument for rather playing the Buccaneers, but it is Tom Brady. The secondary is getting healthier. Leonard Fournette is going to be back, but Max, I'm going to argue that as an Eagles fan, would want to see the Buccaneers play the Eagles because Buccaneers is arguably the best team in the playoffs aside from, the Packers. But if you want to get a Super Bowl, you got to play the best team. You got to prove you're that best team. Why not start off by playing the Buccaneers, get them out of the way, and pave your path to a very unlikely Super Bowl?
I don't want to look too far ahead too. My last point here, but you look at Tampa Bay. If we can get that 6th seed, it'd be a hell of a lot better for us because you avoid Aaron Rodgers possibly in that second round, depending on if the Niners as a 7 seed could knock off whoever they would play as a 2 seed. So that's also something to look at.
That's going to wrap up this episode of the Bird's Nest. Tune in next week when we kind of decipher the Eagles-Cowboys matchups and look ahead to the playoffs.